Okay, let's get started. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Stephanie Lynch. I'm the Senior Technology and Research Manager here at OHD out of Birmingham, Alabama. And I'm joined here today by our Marketing Manager, Justin Lobdell.
Good afternoon.
And Justin will be monitoring the chat. So feel free to throw comments and questions in there as we move along. He'll be able to know when to interject. Let's just go ahead and mention the whole COVID thing, right? So we've all had a rough couple of years, and we're probably a little burned out on all of COVID. And not that this, by any means, would be at the top of your importance list, but there were a lot of negative impacts from COVID on respiratory protection programs. So, and fit testing in particular. We saw shortages of respirators. We saw shortages of the fit testing supplies. We saw shortages of just staff. So whether that staff was the staff that actually needed to be fit tested, your end user respirator users, or the people who are administrators of the program. So we saw that kind of in two different ways, right? Okay, sorry. Let me get a hold of all my stuff and how it works. Be helpful. You think I hadn't been giving webinars for the past 2 years nonstop. Okay, so let's quickly kind of start out. I want to take a quick step back just to get everyone on the same page and brush up on a few of the basics. That's something we have to do every time, and even a couple times over the pandemic, because I was giving really similar talks kind of over and over again, I took out some of these basic slides, and then without fail, every time I'd have someone come back and go, hey, can you just kind of get back and cover some of the basics? So just to get us all brushed up, and I think actually some of that is some COVID hangover too. I think a lot of people may have implemented some respiratory protection as a means of protecting against COVID, and maybe they didn't have their program fully together, weren't aware of all the requirements. We'll kind of touch on that a little bit later too. But so a fit test is when we're challenging the seal of a respirator to a user's face. And that user will have already selected that respirator as comfortable. They would have already been trained on its purpose, how to maintain it, how to store it. And the challenge of that seal is performed through a series of exercises that are part of an approved protocol, which is kind of dependent on where you are, which regulation you're following. But we're going to mostly be talking about what OSHA's requirements are, because that's where we're going off of here in the US. So that gets us to why we do fit test. So we are, of course, fit testing with the main priority of protecting our employees from any workplace respiratory hazard. We want to ensure also that they're well trained on the use of that protection, and that's kind of part of what the whole fit testing process does. But we're also regulated to do so. So I just mentioned that in the US, we have OSHA. OSHA requires fit testing, but several other national and international organizations require it also. That list actually seems to keep growing. More and more countries are trying to implement their own regulations to mandate fit testing on some regular interval. And then by fit testing, just to, it is kind of our forte. So I like to add into the benefits of doing that, because I believe that by fit testing our employees, we're also empowering them with some peace of mind about the protection that their respirators providing them, right? So it's showing them that they have that ability to don their respirator appropriately and protect themselves, have some ownership over their own protection on the work site. And having that aspect of control in your job can be very beneficial. That's something else we may have learned over the course of COVID, having a little bit of more control of maybe where you work, how you work. Some people didn't get that, but I know a lot of people did. Even just the perception of control can kind of help with our overall job satisfaction and mental health, overall well-being, total worker health, right? So when are we going to fit test? Respirator fit testing, according to OSHA, is going to need to be performed initially, and then also anytime it's identified that an unfitted face piece is being used. So hopefully that isn't something that's happening a lot now. I have seen it in the past. I've seen a company, they're working with hazardous stuff. They're trying to do the right thing to protect their employees. So they hand out respirators and not being aware of the requirement. So they're trying to do the right thing, right? But none of those have been tested. I mentioned earlier, I think that might be happening with the pandemic, where some people thought that it was a good idea to implement the use of respiratory protection, maybe specifically those N95 FFRs that we kept hearing about, to provide them as a defense against COVID, but weren't aware of all the requirements that go along with the implementation of a respiratory protection program, right? So you're going to repeat fit test according to OSHA at least annually. Other intervals do exist with other regulations, so make sure that you are sticking to whatever your regulation is, but for OSHA, it is annually. And then it's going to be also if the user has had any facial changes, so significant weight loss, weight gain. Although I always joke that good luck being the one to approach one of your employees because you think they've gained enough weight to impact their respirator fitting appropriately. But it's this annual requirement that was actually relaxed a bit by OSHA due to the shortages that were related to the pandemic. And we'll kind of touch on that a little bit later also. So who can perform these fit tests? OSHA leaves this very vague. There are some standards that provide a list of core competencies for a fit test administrator. I believe ISO is one of those that lists out some nice requirements for what you should expect your fit tester to know and be able to do. And there are also accreditation schemes that are popping up kind of all over the world. Fit to Fit is one of the ones you'll hear about most commonly. That's in the UK, but it's actually spreading all over Europe right now. And then OHD is very proud to be a sponsor of ResFit out of Australia. And I mentioned those are sort of global schemes that are coming up, but there's plenty of classes that you can take here in the US too, if you do want to be a well-trained respirator fit test administrator. And this was actually something because of the pandemic that I started implementing in a lot of my presentations. Because of the pandemic, there can actually be a lot of confusion about what a respirator really is. And so a respirator is going to be something that forms that tight seal against the skin. It's going to cover at least the nose and the mouth, and it's going to limit exposure to certain airborne contaminants. There are air purifying respirators, which include those filtering face piece respirators I just mentioned that a lot of people are just calling N95s. That's not technically correct, but it's neither here nor there. Filtering face piece respirators, elastomeric half and full face respirators, and then our PAPRs, our powered air purifying respirators. As a quick note, there's a loose fitting version of a PAPR. It doesn't require fit testing and it has a significantly lower protection factor than its tight fitting counterpart. But these are listed across that top row there. And then there are supplied air respirators. So SARs and SCBAs, those are the first two on the bottom row. And then there are also combination respirators that are going to be able to be used as both air purifying and also as air supplying. So I imagine you can't read this perfectly, but we're of course going to send out the slides. And then also there's a link, the link is listed. So this has been a really good reference for me to help people understand usually not as much the difference between the different types of respirators, all that is helpful, but to be able to distinguish that from their face covering, right? A lot of people started wearing face coverings, started wondering if that was, an acceptable form of personal protective equipment. And I'm not going to get into, when and when it isn't, but when you're talking about a respirator, it's not a respirator. So I only have Justin here to really throw this question at, but so what does this mean to you guys? If anyone wants to kind of throw in the chat. So those who do not remember the past are condemned to repeat it. Does that mean anything to you, Justin? What do you think?
Those who do not remember the past are condemned to repeat it. So not making the same mistakes.
Right.
Twice.
If you don't remember the mistakes that you've made, you'll
continuously
make them.
Sure.
And so for me, this became very much a mantra of like pandemic preparedness, because this was not our first rodeo, y'all. And I was working for NIOSH over a decade ago. We were doing work on the stockpiling of respirators, most specifically those N95 filtering face piece respirators. That was what a lot of our work was on because it was geared towards healthcare. And that was for the considered inevitable pandemic that we were ultimately going to face. And I don't know about you guys, but this pandemic hit and I personally did not feel very prepared. I didn't feel like I had the right skills and that necessarily I was being given all of the right and appropriate information. I felt a little lost. So that's one thing that I would like to challenge us to do, at least from the perspective of our respiratory protection program, but also really with any of our safety programs, and maybe even with, you can go as far as some home planning for your office. I see a lot of benefit in just making it where if we remember what happened, we have the benefit of hindsight now, right? So we're going to be able to make some plans for the next time this is the next big thing, which we should just go ahead and acknowledge there's going to be a next big thing, right? So what I would challenge you to do is, within the context of your respiratory protection program, be very intentional and look at it from a perspective of pandemic preparedness. Challenge yourself on that and see what maybe lessons you've learned and how to kind of keep you from having to relearn those lessons. But involve all of your key stakeholders. One thing that was really interesting from my perspective was I didn't understand how much I was going to need my IT people. I didn't understand how much I was going to need my human resources people. You know, there's a lot of things you have to consider before you just implement plans or changes. So another thing was with stockpiling. You can stockpile as many respirators as you want, but if you're not appropriately maintaining that stockpile, so introducing a rotation schedule if you need to. You know, we do the elastomeric respirators. Those hold up a lot better, but you still want to be going in and checking them, making sure your filters are in date, that you have enough filters, have multiple options for suppliers of those things. And, you know, it sounds like I'm to say, you know, the word plan, but really plan, be intentional about it. And then train your employees on what that plan is. Train, and communicate. I would honestly say be overly transparent when it comes to your employees and what your plan is for whatever the next thing is. And that's with regards to your respiratory protection program from where I'm speaking, but I do think it's something that you can do for a lot of your programs that can be really beneficial and really just for your business overall. And then I would say, number one, most important thing, make sure to grant yourself some grace. You know, I think we all learned over this experience that we just need to be a little more forgiving. I would say most of us are doing the best we can with the information we have, right? Okay. Not to kind of harp on that. It's just been a big deal with me. But so these are some of the previous COVID regulatory impacts. OSHA previously, and these are no longer in place, but OSHA suspended the requirement to perform those annual fit tests. And that was for those workplaces that were impacted by whatever shortages. And you could read it in different ways, but it was shortages related to whether it was related to your respiratory protection or possibly staffing, all those shortages. And you still had to perform that initial testing. So especially if you were someone who was first implementing the use of respirators in your workplace because of COVID, perhaps, then you would really still have to do all of that fit testing. And so there really was it's not intended to stop fit testing. And if you were still putting forth a good faith effort to comply, that's who this was supposed to be protecting, where you're trying to put forth a good faith effort and you really can't get your annual fit testing done because you need to use those supplies on maybe the initial fit tests or, whatever it may be.
I do have a question.
Okay.
So should everyone have their own respirator from a COVID standpoint? If possible.
I mean, I want to just go ahead and say that I can answer that, but the way I'm answering it is my personal opinion. And my personal opinion is that, yes, I have a respirator at home that is mine. Like I mentioned earlier, when you're talking about an employee and kind of their own empowerment, it helped me feel empowered to have my own respirator. I'm in charge of cleaning it. Now, then again, I have access to a lot of things that make that very easy for me, right? I can fit test myself. I can try a bunch of different respirators. I have access to a lot of filters. So I recognize that may not be the same for everyone, clearly, but to the extent that it's possible, I would want to have my own. And I did the same for my family. My family has their own respirators. And then we also have a small stockpile of some of the, not when it was nurses were needing all the N95s, weren't doing any of that, but now I have my own N95s so okay. That's just mine.
Thank you. Yep.
So sorry if that's not particularly helpful, but that is how I feel. Okay, so now we're actually going to jump into our technology here at OHD, which is controlled negative pressure. And that's going to be our QuantiFit 2 instrument. It's going to utilize controlled negative pressure, and that's going to provide us with a direct measurement of the leakage that's coming into your respirator. It does that very precisely by measuring the exact amount of air that is coming into the respirator during the fit test. And so we're using actual air, not just something floating in the air, as our challenge agent. Okay, and so just a little bit more about the way that works. Oh, and I see you added the picture with the
I did.
graphics here. Beautiful. That's why you have a marketing manager, ladies and gentlemen. So to create and maintain a negative pressure, the user is going to take a comfortable breath. The adapter valve is going to close to seal the respirator. That's now currently it happens automatically. Previously, it was you did it with the trigger button. If you're familiar with our legacy instrument, and then the QuantiFit 2 is going to pull out air until it reaches a set challenge pressure, and that challenge pressure is associated with a breathing rate, and it's doing that within the respirator. If no leak is detected, then the pressure is going to remain constant. If leak is detected, then the QuantiFit will work to remove air. QuantiFit 2 will work to remove air until the challenge pressure within the respirator has been achieved. So it's going to do that for 8 seconds. And during that 8 seconds, it is tracking the exact amount of air that it's removing. And that's how it calculates a leak rate. And that's what makes it a direct measurement of leak. But our triple tube assembly has one line that's going to seal off the adapter breathing ports, and then a dual tube with one side measuring any air that's leaking into the mask and another that is evacuating that leaked air and maintaining a negative pressure within your respirator case piece. So this is how our fit factor is calculated. So the QuantiFit 2 is going to convert the leak rate that it is measured into a fit factor. And to do this, it's going to take the model breathing rate and it's going to divide it by the measured leak rate. And that's how you get each individual exercise's fit factor. So another way to look at this is that it's the ratio of the total air inhaled to the possibly contaminated air inhaled. So that's what our machine is doing when we're talking about that breathing rate, is just creating a constant inhale. That's when you're going to be concerned about that leakage, right?
Sure.
Okay, so this is just an example of that individual exercise fit factor being computed. So it's just an example. Our breathing rates are expressed in liters per minute, but leak rates are expressed in cubic centimeters per minute. This is simply to use the units that make the numbers most easily understood. We wouldn't want to be talking about breathing rates in the tens of thousands of cc's per minute, nor would we want to talk about leak rates in the thousands of liters per minute. For some easy math, I've used the model breathing rate for our read-on protocol. It's also our most common protocol, and a leak rate of 53.8 cc's per minute. So in this scenario, the QuantiFit for that specific exercise, so there's 5 test steps. So for one step, it would show a fit factor of 1,000. So just for comparison, this is why the technologies that are available for fit testing, or this is just one reason why they're so very different. And that's because one of the things that's very different is our fit factors. If you are accustomed to seeing ambient aerosol or CNC fit factors, then our fit factors are going to look honestly probably like quite low to you. And that's because our range is much smaller, but it's also because the technology that we're using is just very different. So this, for individual exercise fit factors that are going to be measured by aerosol methods, they're going to sample the ambient environment and then the in-mask environment, and they're going to create a ratio. The concentration of the particles counted outside the mask are divided by the particle concentration that's found inside the mask. Now, this is where it can be a little bit confusing. And this is really ultimately kind of all our fault for going how we did with fit factors to fit into the box that was already there, right? But this is where people can get confused about the different quantitative fit testing fit factors, because once those individual fit factors for each method are calculated in their very different ways, we then both use, or all, I should say all, everyone uses our harmonic mean to establish the overall fit factor. And the reason that you do that is because the harmonic mean is going to, so fit factors are a ratio. Ratios are numbers of the same kind, and they're used in mathematics essentially to have a better understanding of the value of one thing to or from another. And because fit factors are meant to be compared to a required pass value, this is very useful. So from a health protection standpoint, they should be very conservative. So this is why it's useful to use this harmonic mean. The harmonic mean is going to place greater weight on lower values. So as an example, so you can see how that harmonic mean is having influence. A preliminary look at these numbers would give you an average of 1,000, but the overall fit factor is only 862. And that's because of the harmonic mean as opposed to using a straight average. So this allows fit factors to be more conservative in their estimation of fit. Okay. Kind of getting back into what we're doing here with the QuantiFit 2 and OHD, CMP. So we had the, it's not a good word, so we didn't, it's not a benefit, but we had the opportunity to design some aspects of the QuantiFit 2 to address COVID concerns that our customers were bringing to us, and also that we were seeing just in general, right? So we wanted to make sure that people could test outside more easily. That was something that was happening over and over again, that people needed more and more ventilation, and so they really just wanted to go outside. So we added our battery packs. They're an option that you now have. We also wanted operators and subjects to be able to keep their distance, right? So we added Bluetooth capability. Our color touchscreen was actually already in the works, but the animations really do help administrators keep their distance. You don't have to be right there next to the person that you're fit testing. So they can walk through the test, and you could be a distance away, easily the distance that Justin is from the machine, sure, which we're about 6 feet apart, maybe a little bit more. But you could do that, and the person can go through the test, and essentially if they've got a little, actually with auto start, you don't really even need a stylus until you go to your signature block. But if you do need to do anything, maybe you're having to type in your own name, that's uncommon, but if you are having to do that, you use a little stylus, so you wouldn't have to even touch the machine, which could kind of help reduce contamination. For a while there, we were really concerned about, surface contamination. We didn't know about the relative contribution of that as far as transmissibility. And so that's what I'm talking about. We talk about like how we're planning as we move forward. So at the first inkling of the next thing that's coming along, go ahead and implement your sort of strongest precautions, right? Go ahead and move to fit testing in a separate room. Have as much stuff as you can, all that training up front. A lot of that can be accomplished virtually. And then have your fit testing as touch-free as possible. And then we're also going to talk about the ability with our Pure adapters to fully disinfect those. So just go ahead and implement the strongest controls. And then as we learn for whatever that next big thing is, the relative contribution of those modes of transmission. So whether it's the large droplets or the aerosol, or it's the surface contamination. Once we know that, then we can always pull back on some of those restrictions that we put in place, right? So anyway, getting off on my little tangent again, but that's what you can do. So our battery that we have now, that's going to allow you sort of, just a lot more portability. You don't have to worry about where your closest outlet is. It's really helped me because I'm not having to do like a lot of demonstrations, stuff like that, but I take my QuantiFit 2 with me to teach classes, and I want to be able to show students, and I never know where the outlets are. I'm already having enough trouble getting my computer, hooked up. So it's really nice for me. I just take it, I always have a battery ready, and then I have another battery just in case. And I'm able to just switch them out. It's going to give me more than 4 hours, which is more than I ever really need. Mm-hmm. But say if you're someone who is doing fit testing constantly, even if you need those 8 hours, you got 2 batteries. One can always be charging while it's in there. If you do have access to an outlet, you can also charge separately. So it's just really good. Helps you, like I said, go outside if you need to, in case you don't have outdoor power. This is what I was talking about with our animations. So we have little animations that are going to guide you through the test. They're going to perform the exercise with you. And so each of these are from our different protocols. The top is our military protocol. The middle is actually our one from the HSE in the UK. And the bottom one is our US avatar. So, yes. Yeah. Yep. And so that just really helps guide your users through their fit test, right? So this is what I was talking about with our Pure adapters. This was really one thing that came, I hate to say even a silver lining, like a slight glimmer that came off of all the COVID stuff, where we had the opportunity to go ahead and produce brand new adapters. They can be fully disassembled.
So that should be a video too, Dr.
Oh,
Fish,
great.
if you want to hover over that. just so I can get a better feel for it.
Yeah.
While you
These
talk.
are our, Justin, you. So these are our pure adapters. They're able to be fully disassembled. They can be submerged or wiped. And then kind of the coolest part, at least for me, is we've had a lot of people who were concerned about cross-contamination or even just the perception of cross-contamination. With our instrument and the way the technology functions, there is very, very, very low risk of any sort of cross-contamination with regards to our triple tube assembly, but that doesn't make people feel any better about it, right?
Sure.
So in this instance, we're able to introduce a 95% efficiency filter into the adapter, and you could change that out every time if you wanted to. You could change it out where the employee can see you, so that then they have a lot of confidence that you've made that effort to protect them, right? When you're wiping down your machine or whatever else. So those are the things you can do when, whatever this next thing is, whenever it comes along. So when I'm actually going to perform a fit test here in just a minute, and which please grant me some grace in that. It's not one of the things that I often do in these. I usually have someone who's better at our demonstrations come be one of the fit tests, but you've got me today and I'm going to fit test one of our other employees. But this is the screen that's on the front of our, we're tiny on here, I'm sure, but the screen is in front of our QuantiFit, so you're able to go in and click whatever you need for the test. And that was just so you had that visual as we roll through a fit test, because you're not going to be able to see that when we jump in to the fit test, because we'll pull out of here and we'll just have the real camera on to see us here in person. This is just a frozen image of our Logic software. You can run the QuantiFit standalone, and that's honestly almost exclusively what I do for my purposes. But if you have a lot of people that you're going to fit test, you're probably going to run it through our OHD Logic. And it has the ability to, you can supervise multiple tests, as many as you're capable of supervising, essentially. They can be however distance from you and from each other. And they can run themselves to the test, and it'll alert you when something's gone wrong with that test, so that you can go provide personalized attention if you need to. So that's kind of cool. Oh, skip one. Oh. Okay. So one other thing I want to cover before we jump into the fit test is the steps that we'll be doing. So our read-on protocol is a 5-step protocol. The first step is going to be just standing, breathing normally, facing forward. The second step, you're going to bend over. And the purpose of that is just to test the pull of gravity on your respirator. For step 3, you're going to shake your head and forcefully exhale or shout or talk. And you're going to do that for about 3 seconds. Then you're going to get still, hold your breath, take another measurement. And then the last 2 steps are why it's called the read-on protocol. And that's because we're going to completely remove the respirator. We're going to put it back on, and we're going to test the ability of our respirator users to get a good seal consistently, repeatedly. And that's what we're trying to show there. And so that'll be our test. Okay. So we're going to jump out of here real quick.
Okay. I think Mr. Isom is waiting on us.
I guess I didn't actually have to. Okay. So now are we big?
Yes.
Okay.
Hey.
So this is one of our inside sales guys, Alan Isom. Alan, glad to have you.
How's it going?
We've hidden your respirator right there in the chair.
Ah, I see. Great.
So if you want to hook yourself up,
Sure.
and actually maybe I can just show how awesome the QuantiFit is by how easily you're able to do it without very much input from me, right? So right now it's just clicking through a few screens. I put in Alan's name, I put in my name as the operator, and it's gonna just make sure that we've got our adapters hooked up appropriately, and that we don't have our an inhalation valve, if that was there, in the way. Okay, he just did a quick user seal check. Just make sure that he felt some pressure build inside his respirator.
If you'll just take a step that way so you can see yourself. Yep. Yeah, that's perfect. Yep.
So Alan took a quick breath. He's holding, the machine's gonna measure for that 8-second measurement. And then it's going to go ahead and give us a fit factor. I'm sure Alan passed. Yes, it's moving into the second step, which like I mentioned is the bend over step. Alan went ahead and took his quick breath, auto start engaged. It started the test. Again, it's just gonna roll through that 8-second test where it's just making sure it's able to maintain a good pressure. That's just the style of mask. Someone asking about the nose cup. Yeah, we could have used one. No, it's not necessary to remove the nose cup. Sorry, guys.
So you can see the chats.
Yeah, so in this mode, I'm actually able to see y'all's chats like live as they pop up. But yeah, no, you absolutely don't have to remove the nose cup. So Alan probably, oh, you're shaking his head.
Shaking my head and breathing.
He's breathing and talking. Now he's gonna take a breath and hold it. So there he goes, just through his 8-second test. And then, like I mentioned before, this is why the protocol is called the read-on protocol. This is where Alan's gonna fully remove his respirator. He's gonna put it back on. And this, like I mentioned, is just to ensure that our users can, repeatedly and effectively don their respirator and get a good fit, right? If we saw a big problem with the 4th or 5th step with their ability to do it, then, we would maybe go back into a phase of retraining, right? So this is really one of the best parts as far as confirming that training that you've already provided. And like I mentioned, fit testing, your respiratory protection program is so huge. The fit testing is really just a small part of it. So he's doing his 4th step now. It's going to make that 8-second measurement. Did I miss any chats? Right then? Okay. So now we're going to the final step, and that's just another read on. Alan's going to do the exact same thing, remove his respirator completely, put it back on.
You want to notate while he's doing that, why that's so important, the read on step of actually taking off the.
Yeah, I mean, that's just that you're ensuring that your user can get an effective fit over and over again, like repeatedly donning that respirator, or it's what we think is one of the most important things. Yeah, well, you have no time. Oh, I just saw someone ask about one of the N95 masks. Are you referring to one of the ones now that are elastomeric?
The Envo N95 mask?
I think that might be, is that the one? We've seen several now that are elastomeric N95s essentially. And we've been working very closely with the creators of those respirators so that we can have adapters for them. And, it's a huge thing for us because we're currently not able to fit test the traditional filtering face piece respirators. So, we're hoping this will be a big advancement for us. But so Alan, we really appreciate, do you have anything that you want to just, you were able to kind of breeze through the test. I know you're familiar with it.
Sure. Yeah, I think the 3 biggest things to take into consideration and when you're learning about the QuantiFit to consider would be speed, ease, and accuracy. So speed, our average fit test time we see is 2 minutes. If you fail any step of that read-on protocol, you can retest that step. You don't have to restart the test from the beginning. Ease of use, you don't have to generate any particles. And you never have to probe a respirator when you use OHE technology. And 3, the most important part to me is the accuracy. So because we use controlled negative pressure technology, we're using air as a challenge agent, which produces an extremely accurate fit test. And if you have a respirator that is leaking, the QuantiFit 2 is going to find that leak and potentially save someone's life. So it's important to me.
And that's how you can tell that Alan is one of our sales guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Eisen.
That actually did remind me that one thing that we really should have done is have Alan, all the sales guys, when they're doing their demonstrations, will show you how the QuantiFit 2 is able to pick up a leak source as small as like a, they'll stick a little paper clip, just one little part through the seal.
Mm.
That's what our national sales manager booth always keeps a paper clip in his pocket. The legacy Quantifit also uses the read-on protocol. We actually are, well, yeah, they both use the read-on protocol.
We had a few questions about the pure adapters, but I think that's a. Oh, we've already gone over that, haven't
Oh
we?
my goodness. Yes, we should let you go. Thank you, guys.
No. Oh, no, I think the time is okay.
Oh, it's
So,
okay.
yeah, no, I think we've already gone over that.
Okay.
Can you,
I was like,
can
we
you
supposed to
use,
stop at one?
can you use the pure adapters with both the legacy Quantifit as well as the
Yes.
Quantifit 2, which yes, you can. So,
Yes, you can use
Sorry
either
for that
adapter with
confusion.
either.
Yeah.
I was like, oh no.
No, we're good.
Yes.
You want to jump back into your, into the
Oh,
PowerPoint?
yes, sorry, we only have like 2 seconds. We're kind of rolling into what it was anyway.
Yeah.
So we did our demo. I actually think I never had to go out of that. Yeah. So I just have questions or comments. We were kind of already doing that. It's actually easier for me to see the other way, which I probably should have
Yeah.
planned
that's okay.
for. I wonder if I can pull up, if I do this, are you able to see that, Justin, or is it just me? We will have a recording available, right? We are recording this.
Yes, absolutely. So we will be sending out an email to everyone registered for this webinar, hopefully by the end of today, and it'll contain a recording of the actual webinar as well as the PowerPoint slides as well. So
I don't quite understand the question, how much adapters are of it, like how many adapters are available, or so, okay, for the traditional adapters, we have, it'd be difficult for you to name a respirator with the exception of the fact that some have been developed due to COVID. Difficult to find a respirator that we didn't have an adapter for. As far as the pure adapters, we're slowly getting to them, but so we have what, like 7 or 9 available,
9.
right? I think, yeah, we have 9 different ones available now. Yeah, I'm so sorry, Eric, you're absolutely right. I should have done a failed step. This is a note to myself for next time. Yes, that the protocol of exercises that we just did is OSHA approved. That's the read-on protocol. It's in the standard, so Appendix A of 1910.134. We have a few personnel that can only pass when instructed to bear down. I'm so sorry, William. I think you and I will have to talk offline because I'm not sure what you mean. Elizabeth, Dr. Maples, thanks for attending.
Perfect.
Okay,
I
guys.
think that was it.
Well, I appreciate everyone's attention. And then just for y'all's information, this will be coming out.
Yeah, so we will be sending out the email with the PowerPoint
Yes.
as well as a recording. And there will also we'll put Dr. Lynch's contact information in there as well. So if you do have questions post this webinar, feel free to reach out to Dr. Lynch, on a one-on-one basis. So
Yes.
okay.
And then
Perfect.
yeah, thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you so much. Just want to hit.
They should be aligned with CSA. The read-on protocol is in the Canadian standard. We do have, right, you would have to buy new adapters for that, well, we shouldn't call them N95, but 95% efficiency filters for those to go in there. Those are only compatible with the pure adapters.